जब ताली का टीजर रिलीज हुआ था मुझे तभी लग गया था कि शायद इसमें देखने के लिए कुछ है, बिकॉज इन दैट वेरी स्मॉल क्लिप इटसेल्फ यू कैन सी दैट सुष्मिता सेन हैज पुट अ सेंसिटिविटी इनटू दिस रोल दैट इज वेरी रेयर फ्रॉम पीपल हु पोर्ट्रे ट्रांस कैरेक्टर्स ऑन टीवी. Hi, I am Pratiksha Mishra and you're listening to my review of Taali. Taali is essentially the story of Gauri Sawant, who is a trans activist. You might have maybe popularly seen her in that Vix ad that had happened, just maybe saw a trans woman essentially adopting a girl child. But she's also known for being one of the petitioners in the Nalsa case in the Supreme Court. इस सब के बीच में there is a lot of other things that she's also done, a lot of kind of initiatives that she's taken for the betterment of trans people, for increasing awareness about HIV AIDS, for the betterment of just the impression of sex work in the country and a lot more. ये सब चीज़ें ताली में explore की गई हैं, but also there is a disclaimer show के beginning में which says कि there is some kind of refurbishing of facts that's going on, or there is a certain dramatization. So I won't fully call this a biography. Let's say it's inspired by her story. Sushmita Sen plays the titular role and she does it absolutely magnificently. बहुत बार ऐसा होता है ना कि the trans characters that we've seen on screen are either demonic or they're terrifying or they're going through horrible violence for absolutely no reason, बस ऐसी story में catalyst की तरह. But in this show there is some sensitivity, both in the way it is played and the way that it is written. The show explores a lot. It explores how Gauri Sawant's character as a child dealt with the idea of gender and sexuality, of how family essentially treats trans people before and after they come out, before and after they transition, how society as a whole sees them, the need for recognition, the need for freedom, the need for just basic rights. All of that is explored in this show. ताली का प्रेमिस बेसिकली यही है कि वो मेन गौरी सावंत के लाइफ को एक्सप्लोर कर रहे हैं, पर उसी के साथ साथ दे ऑल्सो एक्सप्लोर कि ट्रांस पीपल देयर लाइव्स, हाउ देर बेसिकली अफेक्टेड बाय दिस काइंड ऑफ ऑस्ट्रेसाइजेशन फ्रॉम सोसाइटी. ताली में एक प्रॉब्लम ये है कि इट इज सो एक्सट्रीमली हेवीली मेलोड्रामेटिक. तो प्रॉब्लम ये हो जाता है कि जब मेलोड्रामा की वजह से ना चीज़ें खिंच जाती हैं और पेसिंग थोड़ा स्लो हो जाता है, सो देर आर पार्ट्स दैट सीम अ लिटिल काइंड ऑफ डल. अगर इतना ज़्यादा as in genuinely अगर इतना ज़्यादा melodrama ना होता, the story would have been much more gripping. And one of the main problems here is the background score. Background score कहीं कहीं अच्छा है, where they're playing like music, actual songs as background score, वो सब ठीक है. But there are times where this सनसनीखेज kind of music is playing, ऐसा horror movie type theme बज रहा है to essentially signify good and evil. That's not necessary. अगर आपकी writing बहुत ज़्यादा strong हो, then just slight subtle background music that just complements your story is enough. यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा वो बहुत ही kind of hammed up लगता है, and that is a problem. The screenplay in itself is pretty decently written, like it's pretty decently paced, but because ये melodrama चीज़ों को खींच देता है, at some points you're like, we could have done without this scene. Scenes की बात अगर करें तो some scenes are actually quite effective in this story. The way that it has been shot, like जो progression है story का is pretty decent. We see how a younger Gauri essentially decides to first become a part of a trans community. वहाँ से decides to get a sex change operation, what that journey is like, dealing with family ties, dealing with societal ties, kind of just finding your own identity. All of that is pretty well written and portrayed by Sushmita Sen. Another very good performance is Kritika Dio, a very adorable Kritika Dio as a younger, much younger Gauri. Just beautiful, just the way that she plays this character is very, very nice. ऐसा लगता है कि you can actually feel what the character is going through. When there are very horrible things happening, you feel, your heart goes out for the character, and that's purely because of how well she has acted in this. ताली का एक प्रॉब्लम ये भी है कि थोड़े nuances absent है स्टोरी में. We are seeing of course one person's perspective and that is not always going to be perfectly fine, but उसमें आसपास जो characters हैं could have essentially been used to add some nuance to the story, जो ज़्यादातर होता नहीं है. There is of course that kind of debate of begging versus work that happens. उसका exploration is a little superficial, which is not great I think in this, because it is a huge discussion that people go through and it's something that needs to be addressed, क्योंकि in society, especially for minority groups, forming stereotypical opinions just happens very fast. So it's films like these or shows like these that have to kind of try and combat those things as well. कुछ टॉपिक्स ऐसे हैं ताली में that are pretty well explored. Like I said, the identity in general or just the fight for recognition is pretty decent. How police brutality is explored is pretty decent. I like that they don't show any scenes of actual graphic violence happening against trans people, which is great to see क्योंकि like I said, it happens. There are a lot of times where trans characters are used as kind of catalysts to show कि oh देखो, look at how much violence is happening, and they go through horrific violence on camera, which is I'm sure extremely triggering to a lot of people. तो इस show में violence is almost always implied, and that is just, I think, very smart writing. The camera work is actually pretty good. Scenes of just queer and trans joy are shot so well, and it's very nice to see on TV. ऐसे stories बहुत rarely देखने को मिलते हैं which are very well explored, and in recent times we have had a little bit of an uptick. थोड़ा सा तो situation improve हुआ है, and I'm glad that Taali in itself has some kind of sensitivity while portraying a topic like this. At the end of the day, Taali could have done much better if it actually trusted itself a little more as a show. If like, instead of just going into melodrama, if you had like trusted the fact that this is a story that deserves to be told, there is a story here, right? Then it would have been, in my opinion, a much better show to watch. एक और चीज़ ये भी हो जाती है कि since this is inspired by a person's life, it becomes almost like an hagiography. थोड़ा सा वो एक क्या कहते हैं कि oh look, our character is the best character to exist वाला feeling happens, and that's never great. And but I think it's not rare. A lot of biographies or stories that are inspired by people's lives do that, but I'm gonna call it out every time. So yeah, it is a little hagiographic, so that's another thing that is a little remiss for me. I would, however, like to end with a shout out to one character, Nargis, played by Sheetal Kale, truly one of my favorite characters on the show. Just the idea of this character existing and so beautifully and so freely is just, it's just so nice to see on screen. And it's again the performance is so free spirited कि आपको genuinely उनको screen पे देख के अच्छा लगता है. Just the adha and the nazakat that she has is absolutely perfect. But yeah, still the star of the show is still Sushmita Sen. What a brilliant actor just in general. Like, what a casting. It's great. It's just absolutely fabulous. And for that reason, my rating for Taali is 3 stars out of 5.